James, and recently I published a video regarding the beta edition of Twilight 2000, and there were a lot of comments both on the channel and on Facebook. I just want to give a few comments regarding that. I'm going to break it down question by question. Now, I appreciate we've all got different views, but we're adults. Yeah, let's agree to disagree sometimes. That's going to happen. Okay. I also want to say as well, I'm going to moderate the comments on this one. I generally don't moderate the comments, but what I'm going to say is, if it's just the background's rubbish, I'm not going to accept that. Give me a reason, give me a valid argument, and I'll listen. I will change my views. I'm quite happy to do that. So, without any further ado, let's start on the questions. One comment that was raised was, well, I'm bound to like it, I'm listed in the credits. I need to perhaps clarify this. I'm not an employee for Free League. I've not had any pay off them. I didn't even know my name was there. That came as a complete surprise to me, and the first I knew was when someone commented on it and said, you know, you're bound to like it. I said, what name in the credits? I didn't pay to be one of the backers to get my name in it. And then I looked at it and went, oh, I am. And it turns out that I was put in there because of the feedback I gave to the alpha version of the rules. I haven't looked through at all of the bits and pieces yet. Maybe some of my changes were taken on board. I don't know. I know that I give a lot of feedback regarding the state of Britain. You can see my comments if you go to the alpha. If you're a backer, you can actually see the comments I sent them. Everything has been done like that, so you can see what I think. To be in there, I regard as a great honour, and absolutely loving the game, and have done for, well, since it came out in what, 85 or thereabouts. I just feel stunned that I'm in there, and really appreciate it. But it's not no financial reward for it, and nothing like that. That would be hoping too much. I mean, Free League do want to pay me, great, I'll willingly become a consultant for them. But no, I didn't even know my name was in there, so that sort of hopefully will clear that one up. It's a good question, isn't it? What did happen to the 500,000 reinforcements? Now, it's been noted that there's no way they could all have got killed on the way across, and I agree completely with that. I think there's going to be a lot of casualties. That we can live with. I think that's a perfectly reasonable agreement. Both sides would probably agree. There's still a substantial number going to arrive. So what happened to them? Well, a lot will have been killed since. That's fairly logical. Doing the maths, you do see big gaps in the numbers though. However, that list of forces in Poland is far from complete. For example, in the rulebook it doesn't mention the entire British First Corps. It's somewhere in northern Poland, according to the background. Whether it's withdrawn to Germany, which might be a possibility, I don't know. So we'll assume it's an incomplete list. There's also the possibility, if you think back to second edition, that the troops could be perhaps in Yugoslavia or places like that. That's another option. There'll be a substantial rear percentage, but yeah, I think there are some missing troops, and hopefully that will get resolved. Moving a carrier into the Baltic being a bad decision. Yeah, it probably was. US Navy is designed to fight very much in deep water. It can be used to support on land, but the freedom of manoeuvrability would have gone there. People have argued that it's probably not a decision that the president would have taken. I still think it could be. Two reasons. One, it's an attempt not to get into a shooting war, and I think that's an important thing to consider. Sometimes you push things further than you plan to. Depending on which source you believe, you could argue the Vietnam War with the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Yeah, I know there's theories that it didn't actually occur, but you could see that sometimes you push it to the point where a war happens. I'd also argue that you get similar problems in real life. People make mistakes, and the classic example, I can't find the reference now, I've written it down but I can't see it, was the two warships which are sailing in the Pacific just after Japan enters the war, the two British warships, which are both sunk. They're sent with no aircraft cover. It's already regarded as a bad idea, but it was still done. So people make wrong decisions. That happens. There's no two ways about it. If you don't like the carrier in the Baltic, pull it back. I can see that. Roger Garish has always got a lovely comment on 7 Days to the River Rhine, where he said, "You've bought it. It's your game. Do what you like with it. Modify it." Yeah, there's no problem with that. I like the carrier in the Baltic, and I can live with that. So I'm going to keep that in my background. Yeah, Soviet successes against NATO, and one commentator noted that the US Army that gets hammered is the one that has defeated Iraq using the best Soviet equipment without losing a single tank. Yeah, worth a bit of reading on this one. The Soviet kit wasn't the most, or the Iraqi kit wasn't the most up-to-date Soviet kit. It was predominantly export versions. There's a lot of variation within Russian equipment. You have export models, you have upgrades, and so on. So there is that side of it. The other problem is Iraq fought a very bad war. They fought to the wrong plan, and I don't think it helped that the Americans learnt the wrong lesson from it. They learned that air power solves everything. That was the lesson that people took away. Looking at the former Yugoslavia, you can see it doesn't work. It needs boots on the ground. Now, there is a very interesting touch of that in the background, in that once the Soviets move into Poland, NATO tries to halt them with airstrikes, and it doesn't work. So yeah, I'd suggest a good book to read would be John Keegan about the Gulf War. He did a very interesting study of it. It's difficult because we've also got to start looking at numbers. The Soviets can resupply a lot faster. It's worth noting that talking to professional soldiers, the number who commented that the basic NATO doctrine was to go nuclear straight from the start, all the big simulations, that's what occurred. It was the only way to stop the Soviets. Okay, they haven't got the Warsaw Pact working with them on this one. That does make a difference. I'm guessing, it doesn't specifically state it in the background, that you do get a drawdown of NATO. The peace dividend would probably happen. I think that would occur. It doesn't state it. It's going to put a lot of troops lower quality, take longer to arrive. So yeah, I think it's justifiable. The problem we have, if we're not careful, is we will end up with a scenario where it doesn't matter that we don't get a game from it. We need to get to a situation where we have to have a game. The game has this situation where both sides are exhausted and worn out after a length of fighting. You could play it without that, but it wouldn't be Twilight 2000. It's very difficult to get to a balance between realism and gaming. We need to have a good balance that we're happy with. Like I said, I'm happy with it. I think it works. Yeah, it takes the Russians having a few breaks, NATO having some bad luck. A good book to read on this one is Ralph Peters' Red Army. I would highly recommend that for a view of how the Russians saw it might go off. Bearing in mind he was an intelligence officer for the US military. Very good book, and gives you an idea what could occur. Being able to supply Europe is an interesting one. I don't think they could. You might have the ships. Do you actually have the stores to bring them in? That's the first question. Have you got the resources to actually get your ships across the Atlantic? Never mind put the stuff on them. Somebody talked about using the Tokyo Express style. Now unfortunately that was an actual failure. The big problem with it was you were losing ships for not achieving a lot. I don't think realistically you could get enough across the Atlantic to resupply. The sheer logistic scale of that would be massive. It's worth noting, for example, the British Army in the first Gulf War, just to put the armoured divisions in the field, basically stripped NATO or BAOR bare. There was next to nothing left in BAOR, with the end result that even things like wartime ammunition stocks went. So logistically it's a massive undertaking, and I don't think the US Navy would have the capability to do it, and things are in such a mess in the States that you probably haven't got the resources to move across anyway. Are the Soviets still functioning? I can't see any evidence to say that they're anywhere different to NATO. NATO don't appear to have any problems functioning up to the start of the offensive. You're coordinating an offensive that includes both Sweden and Poland. The Russians don't seem to be doing anything higher level than that. So I can't quite see where that one's going. Okay, there's no mention of all the different countries. Yeah, there isn't. But what I would suggest is going back to first edition Twilight 2000. Interestingly, the backgrounds are very similar in length, and there are massive gaps in that as well. We only found out about the Soviet push into Norway, if I remember correctly, when the British source book came out. So yeah, it doesn't mention a lot. It's space to expand on. You can decide whether they honoured the NATO commitments or not. Some people will, some won't. Till we get a canon answer. Again, it's your game. Play with it. Do what you like. Okay, the US and the Allies needing nukes. I think I've sort of touched on this already. It was commented about the going straight through Poland before NATO gets a chance to react and doesn't achieve anything. Well, the Russians are set and ready to go on that. NATO isn't. The Soviet ability to hide attacks was high. Masarovska, which was a massive Soviet art, and there's some good examples of it in the Hunt for Red October, where NATO, Red Storm Rising, where NATO gets a few breaks and cottons onto it. It's discussed in an awful lot of books. Things like Team Yankee and things, to mention it briefly. It's talked about it in the Third World War by General Sir John Hackett. So there is variation as to how well they could conceal it. I don't think NATO would be in a position to do anything in time, realistically, reading the background. If you plan for it at the same time you're planning the Baltic Republics, you've got that few weeks lead, which might be enough. NATO then throwing in the airstrikes, yeah, doesn't work. We start talking ground power. and then, as we've said, nukes getting chucked in, to me, fits the background quite well. Okay, I don't know how we're getting the comments on the characters, particularly since we actually are talking the history. Realistically, it's about the same level of detail we had in first edition. Characters were assumed to be American. There were rules for giving different languages, but nothing at all for looking at their the different forces. So yeah, if anything, there are more character options because you've got civilians. Civilians, if we remember, in first edition weren't covered until we got 3W's add-on City of Angels. That was the first time civilian characters were included, so we've got them from the outset with this. Someone said it's thrown out the military simulation part of the game and the modules. I'm not quite sure what's meant by that. I also think it's a bit of an unfair comparison because we didn't get that until we started getting the mass battle rules in Pirates of the Vistula and Ruins of Warsaw. That was the first time we got mass battle rules. If we compare like for like, what came out for first edition, as I've said, the history is about the same length, and the military simulation from the modules. Well, there aren't any modules yet. Let's see what comes out in the modules. You know, let's be fair. Yeah, quite a complex one, this, and I think it makes a mistake in how a ship's crew is put together. You're not starting with a whole new crew with no experience. A lot of these will be experienced sailors being put into a different posting, so you will have people who know what they're doing. Yes, they haven't worked together. I get that. That's what shakeout cruises are for. And if the scenario we're looking at is the ships are put into the Baltic as part of a deterrent option, then that's really their shakedown cruise. You're not expecting them to go to war. So yeah, I think that sort of covers it fairly well. Okay, well, the Soviets having an economic windfall, yeah, okay, we needed to balance the background out. I don't think it's too far outside reality. It gives you a more equal force. Remember, we can't have the game as a one-sided walkover, otherwise there's no background to play from. It does note as well that a lot of this is used to modernise the armed forces, and in particular the training. So yeah, I can see that. The modern Russian army of today is probably a good comparison, where you now have a much more professional force with better equipment. Well, those were the questions I was asked. I probably haven't covered all of them. I may have missed your favourite question out, that's fine. By all means, put a comment in and I can discuss it. Like I said, as long as we have a nice civilised conversation and we agree that we're not always going to agree, that's fine. Let's be adults about it. It's a game at the end of the day. It's one that's been very dear to my heart. I played it right from first edition and I've absolutely loved it. If you've seen how much stuff I've put in the forum, you'll get an idea for how much I love the game. I've got to rework a lot of those for 4th edition. I had to rework them after I'd written them for 1st edition. I don't mind that little bit of a change. End of the day, it's a game, and I don't want anybody to fall out with it. Let's enjoy it, let's play it in our own way. Worst case scenario, you've got a rule set that you can take away back to previous editions. There are some nice additions to the rules, let's be honest. The stress factor I think is a good addition. I think that's brilliant, and I think the fact that it emphasises the mental deterioration of your character as well as the physical is great. So please let me know what you think. I do listen. I don't always agree, but that, as I say, we're adults, and I'll see you soon for another video.